Halito, and welcome to Native Chalk Talk, a podcast by natives for all. Here we're keeping our native ancestors' stories and history alive while also sharing with you our native cultures, traditions, and more. I'm RachaelYoungman, a Choctaw originally from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as we learn from our Native American guests. And stay tuned for the end of each episode where we'll talk about some great ways to support Native causes and or Native-owned businesses. Let's get started.
I am more than a maker.
More than an athlete.
More than a pastor.
Chata ili finachili.
I am Choctaw proud.
We are the Choctaw Nation, and together we're more.
So now I'd like to talk about Roy and Dale and their fun household. The Dayton Daily News in 1955 wrote, "The Rogers are a truly devoted couple, outstanding in a land of merry and still merry. Dale went down to Texas not long ago to spend 4 days with her family. Roy was at home on the day she arrived, posing for some pictures. He saw her drive in, and because she had left her own car at the airport, and he said, 'You'll have to hold these pictures up for a while, fellows. Ma's been gone for 4 days and I want to see her.' And he took off at a dead run for the house." I just love that story.
Oh,
He sure loved his wife. So your parents were obviously on the road a lot, right?
yes.
So what was that like for you as a child?
Well, it was difficult at times.
Mhm.
Well, okay. First, we would go on the road with them. Not all
Yeah.
the time, but some of
Okay.
the time.
Yeah.
And that was that was kind of a lot in itself. I mean, you have these kids, and if they had to
I
fly
bet.
somewhere, we would have to fly with them. So
Oh my.
Cheryl, being the oldest, was kind of in charge of making sure that we, well, I can't say behave because there's always one of us kind of loose somewhere.
Oh, I bet.
But so yeah, we would have to get up early in the morning, and of course we didn't all want to. And we would, at that time, you'd dress for to take the plane.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I love
So
that.
we were all in our dresses and stuff,
Aw.
and it was fun. I loved planes. I just love flying. And
Yeah.
then as we got older, and I think it was about 5 when Cheryl married, and then not too long after Mimi married.
Okay.
And then maybe it was a year later that, or 2 years later, that Linda Lou married. So we were pretty
Okay.
young, and
Yeah.
we would still go on tour with them with the state fairs.
Oh, fun.
And yeah, that was. We loved watching the acts and everything. And but the times that we were left home, for some reason, maybe when I was about 8 or 9, 8, I would think. I wasn't too old, but I
Right.
developed this depression time when they
Aw.
were to leave. And I remember it specifically feeling like they were going and never coming back.
Oh.
And um, it would set so heavy on me that sometimes I'd just start crying the night before. And mom, I feel so sorry for her because she didn't, she would hate to leave
Yeah.
me, and so she would, as she did every night, say, hear our prayers, and then she would rub my back. And of course,
Oh, so sweet.
yeah, and to this day I still love my back rubs.
Right.
But it would put me to sleep. And so
Aw.
but it started happening more, I mean, almost all the time. And we didn't know why. She thought maybe when I was little, separation
Yeah.
anxiety or
Mhm.
something. And
Yeah.
like when you're taken too young from your mother, which
Mm.
is why they put children now in foster homes as soon as they can, rather
Ah,
than keep them.
in like
But
an orphanage or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So,
Aw.
um, and I know that some of my siblings weren't exactly thrilled, um, always having them gone or being pursued by news media and
Sure.
stuff. And so that part was hard. I got over it, and I'm not sure how it just disappeared, but it did.
Yeah,
And
kind of grew out of it.
yeah, but so um,
Hmm.
it was hard, but I loved going with them when they did go on tour.
Yeah,
And
that's
as an
what a
adult,
life.
as an adult, I've learned to appreciate because I've been out and met people and what they meant to them, what my parents meant to these other people. They would tell me stories of how um, their families were not what most families are, kind and loving, and some of them were abused, and some of them were
Hmm.
missing. They didn't spend a lot of time with them, and how they always looked to mom and dad as their second parents, and that
Right.
it gave them something to in their life that they were missing. And hearing those
Hmm.
stories, I understood exactly how important mom and dad were, and that I'm glad that they were there for them in that sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've heard some really sad stories, but strong because they were able to because of my parents.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's a big responsibility for someone who's in the limelight to take on,
yeah,
and they did it well. They did it very well, and still tried to be great parents to y'all at the same time, which
yeah,
that's a
was
lot of,
not easy. Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's a lot. It's a lot of kids, it's a lot of traveling, it's a lot of performing, and they must have both just had so much energy. I just don't even know.
Oh, I don't either.
Hey, did they ever get tired? Did you ever see them like taking a nap on the couch or anything?
Not very much.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, yeah,
I know that even just sometimes the things that I do for work, like in my day job, I present, and if I've had a whole day of that, I'm done at the end of the day. I'm just exhausted,
yeah.
don't want to talk to
Me too.
anybody, much less come home to 9 kids. So
Yeah.
yeah. So you've given kind of a little bit of a look of what your mom and dad were like as mom and dads to you. So, but is there anything more you'd like to say? Like, what was your mom like, and what was your dad like?
As growing up or
I
adult
guess
or well,
that's a good question. I guess, baby, basically as you were growing up, it sounds like your mom was super nurturing and very bullheaded, like she got what she wanted and that kind of thing. And then your dad sounds like he was a little quiet. Does that sound right on, or is there anything you'd add to that you want us to know?
yeah, it was pretty much like that. What's funny is that as far as we had rules and we had bedtimes and we had um, church times. We always said a prayer at dinner, and mom had this thing had called Bread of Life, and you have these little cardboard with sayings on 'em,
I know
scriptures.
we had that. That's so funny.
Oh, really?
That's crazy.
And we read one every night, and so we had that. But if you broke the rules or did something you were supposed to, left tools out there or whatever, um, the first I guess the first wave was mom, and they had already agreed on what punishments you would get.
Okay.
Sometimes we got a spanking. The
Yeah.
girls, we didn't tend to get as many spankings. I don't know if it was just because we're girls or not as
Yeah.
bad. I don't know, but
Oh man.
um, but then Dad hardly ever doled out the spankings or whatever.
Yeah.
But if we continued or reacted up or got upset or whatever, she would say, I'm going to have to tell your father. And
Oh.
then we would panic. And we never saw him really do anything. I mean, he wasn't the big, but you knew that once it got to dad that you were in big trouble.
Ooh.
And yeah.
Well, the Logan Daily News in 1954 wrote, "We believe in old-fashioned discipline," says Dale. "Each child has certain duties. Even little Dodie must put away her toys and hang up her clothes before she
And
goes to bed at
stuff
night."
them in
That's
the
so cute.
not stuff them under the bed or put them in the drawers,
Yep, put
which
them
is what
away. I mean,
yeah.
what else could you do when you have 9 kids? So did you try to put them
Yeah.
under the bed?
Yes.
It's so funny.
Or in the
Um,
closet, just throw them in.
yeah, it's easy. It's done. It's out of the way. And then it goes on to say that she says the boys empty the baskets, hang up their clothes, and spread up their beds before they leave for school in the morning. The 2 older girls make their beds, set up the table, and help with the dishes. Today's youngsters are living in such a mixed up world that I think the only way to keep them on the right track is to give them responsibilities and to try to teach them the rules. So, what I like about that is that's good. Those are good nuggets for today's parents, for all of us, to keep
Mhm.
in mind. So did you have babysitters or nannies, people that helped?
Yes, yes, we did. I had a babysitter even as a teenager when I was the last one
Okay.
there. Or Dusty
Yeah.
and I were the last in Apple Valley. And if they went away, well, of course they went away for a night,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that was the only time we had somebody at the house to watch us was when they had to go overnight. It's
Wow.
not that.
So your mom was doing all this stuff, and as long as she was home, there was no extra help. You guys were
Oh, she had
strictly.
extra help. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, when we moved to Apple Valley, she didn't have the daily help, the cooks, the cleaners, the um, housekeepers that she
Oh,
did when we
okay.
were in Chatsworth.
Right.
And since there are only 2 of us, Dusty and I, that moved to Apple Valley, she would have somebody come in maybe once or twice a week
Okay.
to help her cleaning and stuff, but not cooking. She was not the best cook,
But you
but
can't be good
she
at
got
everything,
better. Yeah, she got better.
Yeah,
She got
that's so cute.
better.
Again, I mean, she's out there doing big things, so I can't judge her for
Yeah.
not also being a good cook. Um, so you talk a lot about Apple Valley. I assume that's probably the house you know the most, right?
Well, we moved there when I was, what, 13.
Oh, okay. So
So,
what were both households like? Or if you just want to talk about Apple Valley, that's fine. What was it like living there? You had a lot of
um,
animals and stuff like that, right?
yeah. Now in Chatsworth, it was like 300 something acres. So we
Dang.
had all that property. We had a lot of animals. We had, they did a filming of the Brave Eagle series there.
Oh, wow.
Um, well, sometimes, I'm not sure all the time, but we had horses and we had lemon trees, orange trees, fig trees.
Ooh.
We had berries growing, wild berries and things like that. I can't remember everything that we had, but
Yeah.
and animals. Dad at one point had a lot of bird dogs and things like that, and
Oh, that's cool.
pigeons and pigs and cows and bulls and the usual menagerie at a
Yeah.
ranch.
Oh
So,
my
and it was fun.
gosh.
I loved that place, and I always
Aw.
said if I could afford it as an adult, I would buy it back. But then um, I sold most of it. And Val Kilmer had lived there at one
Yes.
point.
And
His
my
parents had
husband
bought the
just told me
house.
that the other day because I'd been talking about
Oh,
your
really?
story a lot, and he was like, "Oh, Val Kilmer bought their ranch," and I
Yeah.
was like, "What?" Or his dad or something, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
crazy.
His
That's so
dad.
neat.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I bet
So,
you miss it and wish you could have it back, but there'll be those great memories and hopefully some pictures. I was surprised that you said you don't have a ton of pictures.
no, not at all.
What
I
happened to
I
them?
I think just as we got older, the pictures didn't go with us, and then the pictures we
Yeah.
had at each move, it seemed like I got had less and less, and
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I was looking
Aw.
when I moved out here, and still not as many as I would have hoped.
Yeah, I
I see
know.
more pictures on eBay of
My
things that
God.
and that I was in. I was like, how on earth did I get? I
That's,
bought a couple just so
you
I
had
could
to
have
buy
them.
your own
But
pictures. That's so not fair.
yes,
If there's any listeners out there that have photos or at least want to make copies for Dodie, please let us know because she deserves to have her own photos. Wow, crazy. So your dad and mom, which we haven't talked about yet, but is such a big part of their lives was, the Christian faith. So tell us
Mhm.
more about your perspective on that.
We were raised in a Christian home, so they had become Christians before I um, entered the picture, and so we were raised that way, and um, went to church and had church functions, got involved in church functions. Um, well, the first church I think was the Methodist church in Chatsworth.
Okay.
Now, okay, wait, let me back up. Sandy and I were both um, christened in the Episcopal church.
Okay.
So that was the first church, and then Methodist church, and then let's see, was it other? Well, then the last church was well, with the bus accident occurred, was the church in the valley. It was a church, Disciples of Christ,
Okay.
and we went there, and then the accident happened. Then we moved, and we went to a Presbyterian church. And my mom was always interested in different churches because
Hmm.
some things would bother her, or if there were politics in church, or
Yeah.
they got said you can't do this or you can't do that, that bothered her. So
Don't
when
tell me
we went
what
up
to
to
do.
Apple, yeah, when we went up to Apple Valley, um, Dad said, pick a church and stay with it. So
Right.
um, she, after looking and searching and um, going to different churches, she found the Presbyterian church and she liked the minister. And he was a lovely man.
Hmm.
You could just see Christ on his face.
Yeah.
And so I was christened in the Episcopal. I was, you go through this process in in the Presbyterian church. I forget what it's called. Um, but I ended up going through that process and becoming um, a member of that church. And then in later years, I was baptized in the Church of Christ. So
Yeah.
I have like
Okay.
this,
Yeah.
but that church was really, it was a good church. I had friends
Yeah.
there, and mom and dad loved it. So um,
Great.
they went to, when they were in Chatsworth, they started going to the Hollywood Christian group, which
Hmm.
were a lot of actors had attended, for those that um, actors that sometimes you were criticized for being a Christian or made fun of or
Hmm.
whatever. So it was kind of like a church for
A safe
celebrities
place.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
That makes sense. And in
So,
California, I'm sure there's a need for that for sure. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that because I know it's such a big part of your family's life and really thankfully held y'all together during those really rough times.
yeah.
Wow. So we've talked about each of you kids, but there's a character in this whole story of which we have not spoken yet. Roy's golden Palomino Trigger.
Oh,
It seems I love this horse.
I
It seems
know.
right. I mean, did you know him? Did you know Trigger?
Yes, he, I was able to ride him, not by myself. He
Yeah.
would put us on him, but he was a trick horse, so you had to be careful not to cue him.
Uh, yeah.
You don't want him rearing up and while you're
Right.
on him. So yeah,
That's so
yeah.
funny. Yeah, you had to be careful. I never would have thought about that with a trick horse. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. He's
So
just the more I read about him, the more and I remember him from again, we watched a lot of black and white westerns, a lot of cowboy shows growing up. So it seems Roy's interest in horses started with a gift. His dad, Andrew Sly, was working at a shoe factory in Portsmouth. Is it Portsmouth or Portsmouth? Portsmouth.
Portsmouth.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
sorry, Ohio people in
That's
Portsmouth, Ohio. I wrestled with that a lot last night. But they lived on a farm in Lucasville. So it sounds like the dad would just have to come home on weekends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so the story goes that his dad would come home bearing gifts, and one of those gifts was a horse one time. Amazing. So this was an ideal present because it really spurred Roy's love of horses and the world of the cowboy. Now, Roy actually met Lucille, his first wife, when he was acquiring a colt named Golden Cloud. And after he purchased it, he renamed it Trigger. And the Waco Tribune Herald in 1958 reported the following: aware that a smart horse usually has the intelligence of a 5 or 6 year old child, Roy was astonished at the colt's superior IQ. Right then, he named him Trigger because his brain reacted quick as a trigger. So Trigger knew over 150 tricks, and his trainer said Trigger can learn in a month what most intelligent horses would learn in 6 months. So that was just blew me away. And then Trigger and Roy's German Shepherd dog Bullet that you mentioned before starred in the Roy Rogers shows, in over 100 movies. So I love that horse. I love Trigger. What was he like? You said you would get on him and you just had to be careful, right? Was he pretty
Oh, he
gentle?
was. Yes, yes. It was like
Oh,
he knew. He knew that this is a child, so you know,
right.
take it easy.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah,
What a
Dad, he
sweetie.
loved him. I mean,
Oh,
he
I
was
bet he
special.
did.
He really was.
Totally. There's probably no other horse like that. And so
I
Roy was known
know.
to do some crazy things with his beloved horse. That aforementioned article from the Waco Tribune Herald that said, it said that during his first rodeo engagement at Madison Square Garden, Roy readily agreed to ride Trigger into the lobby of the Hotel Dixie on West 43rd Street as long as it sells war bonds. So Trigger proved to be a perfect gentleman, took a pen in his teeth and signed the register with a big X. He he nonchalantly rode up in the elevator to their 24th floor suite where he munched well-earned carrots that were served on a platter. By the time they had retired for the night, they had persuaded spectators to add $16,000 to the war chest. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Story. Can you imagine? He just like wrote an X with his mouth with a pen.
That was normal.
You grew up around that. What?
I know. I have a picture of Dad and Trigger in the hotel room, and they're lying down on the floor together.
Oh my God. And you're probably like, what? Horses don't always write with pens? I
Yeah.
don't know. This horse is broken. It does not do what Trigger did. Oh, I love it. That's great. So it sounds like as Trigger got older, he had to be replaced by Trigger Jr. Is that correct?
Well, they needed another horse to go on the tours, and so
Okay.
he wasn't so much replaced as just an addition to
Oh, okay. Was
to
he Trigger's
his.
son or was he just
No,
a
no,
different horse? Okay. From a different lineage. Um,
right.
So I'm sure your dad must have missed his buddy Trigger when he passed on. And just as life
Hmm.
goes on and we all get older, your dad and mom reached their golden years with grace and with that positive outlook on life that they had always had. So, what was your dad like in his later years?
He was still always like to busy himself with things. He had hobbies. When we moved to Apple Valley, well, he had his motorcycles, but then in his late years, he couldn't ride. But
Yeah.
um, he got us these little Honda 50s or whatever they call it, so we could ride the dirt trail in
Awesome.
back of our house. And he
Yeah.
got me a horse, my own horse,
Nice.
and he got into rock collection. He would cut the rocks and put them through the rock grinder,
Yeah.
whatever the.
What are those are called? I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And he would like to make different things out of them. And rock sander. But anyhow,
We had one, so I don't know why I can't remember.
oh,
Oh well.
and he
Anyway.
loved that. I mean, he just loved doing things. He loved going to flea markets, flea
Oh, okay.
markets,
How
and he
cute.
would see different things. He'd come home with different gadget or the sand that you turn over and it makes a different picture
Yeah.
with the different colored sand. And
Yeah.
you turn it over again, or the nails that not nails, but they're like some kind of they're like nails to me, but you put your face on it and pull it away and it
Oh,
shows
right.
your
And it
face in
keeps
it.
the same
Yeah, you
position
could
of
put
yeah. Your
yeah.
dad liked that
Um
stuff. That's so cute.
yes. And
It's like, look,
of course
kids.
he would get stuff for us or his my other cousins, I mean nieces, and
Yeah.
he got my grandson. My grandson um, was born deaf,
Okay.
and so he was born in '86, and he got him a blanket that he still has and passed
Aw.
down to his kid and
Aw.
so on. But yeah, so it was he loved those going to find unusual things,
Right.
and then they got into cats. Dad was always a dog person,
Oh,
but
and then all of a sudden he likes
mom,
cats.
yeah, mom had the favorite cat, and dad would let him um, sit on his lap, and then he grew to love him too. So, um, yeah, he would try to keep himself busy. Mom
That's
was
so
always
cute.
busy.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how
Um,
she kept herself busy in the later years too, right?
oh my goodness, you wouldn't know. When she had her stroke, she had to be in a wheelchair.
Okay.
And so she had this show called A Date with Dale,
Mm.
and she would interview people.
Yeah.
And of course, I think she did most of the talking, but um, she
That's
loved that. I mean,
adorable.
that was just her thing. She was in
Yeah.
seventh heaven, and she always
That's
wrote. She always, in fact, when she passed away, she still had a book in the
that's
going. So
amazing.
I mean, I would be with her, and she would either talk into a um,
Like a dictaphone or
yeah, or I would write something down for her if something thought came to her. But she always had
aw.
a pad and paper with her, a pen and paper, and always writing. And she would still go to do shows. If, they wanted her to speak. She spoke. Um, it was difficult with in a wheelchair, but she managed. I went with her one time to, I think it was Dallas,
Yeah.
Texas, and helped her, through that. And
Oh,
um, like I said, she was busy, just
what
a
a
busy person.
woman, man. She was so
Yeah.
strong, so tough, went through so much, and yet was so seems like she was very nurturing and kind.
Hmm.
Well, so your daddy, Roy Rogers, passed away from congestive heart failure on July 6, 1998, in his home in Apple Valley, California. The paper stated he was 86 years old, and Dell and the other family members were at his side. So, sounds like were you able to be around him in those last few days and hours?
Yes, we would. I lived in Lancaster at the time, and so that was like 50 miles from um, Apple Valley. And I worked down in, I can't remember the name where I worked. I think that
It
starts with
must
a
have been
C,
exciting.
Calabasas. It
Okay,
was
so you worked in
Calabasas.
Calabasas. Yeah.
Yes. And I loved it down there. I was a paralegal. And so
Hmm.
I would come up and sometimes we would go over. And when it got really bad, the doctor said, because it was hard getting him to eat. And they
Uh,
said, well, whatever he wants to eat, let him eat, eat it. And so he wanted ice cream. And ice
Mhm.
cream was always one of his favorites. And so she
Aw.
she would buy the little quarts or whatever,
Yeah.
half gallons or whatever, and just give it to him. And he just eat it out of the container. He loved it so much.
Perfect.
So yeah, I went home that night after being with him, and sometimes he'd call me Dodo. Hey Dodo.
Dodo.
And
Aw.
and then the next morning he passed away. So
Mhm.
um yeah.
I can only imagine that, what a legend has passed on, and but to you guys, it was, you know, that was your dad, and you're, probably the rock of your life and all that. So it must have been really hard. So did he have any parting words that you know of, or did he talk about much before he passed on?
Just he said happy trails a lot
Aw,
to
that's
us,
perfect. Yeah.
and he just would ask about the children mainly, how
Yeah.
everyone was doing. And um, there is one thing, um, I don't know if I should say it, but
Oh,
we were that night we were in his room, and he pointed over to the wall and said, "Hey, buddy, what you doing? What you doing here?" And Mom and I
oh,
looked at each other, and we said, she said, "Who, Roy?" She said, "Who are you talking to?" He kind of looked at her and said, "Oh, that guy right there." And he said,
oh,
"Can't you see him?" He said, "He's standing right there." I was like, we're looking at each other, um, and then he kind of laughed it off and started talking to us about other things. So it
who did
it
he
was
see?
kind of,
I wonder who it was.
I don't know.
Aw. All these little signs that were going on in your family when things would happen.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Wow. So the sweet and loving Dale Evans, who loved her children and husband dearly, died also of congestive heart failure on February 7th, 2001. And how about her? Did you guys get to spend a lot of time together before she passed, or did she have any parting words of wisdom or anything like that?
Um, we would try to go over as much as we can, and they said that she would only have a couple days left, so we were going over there
Yeah.
both every day. And then after a week passed, he said, "Well," he goes, "maybe I was wrong." The doctor. I
In
said,
true
so
Dale
I thought,
Evans fashion.
yes, I thought she'll go when she's good and ready.
That's right.
So
Oh.
I was going to go to work that day, and sometimes I would leave early so we could go over there, and but decided not to for some reason. And then we went over to Mom's, and she was um, she had her eyes closed, and she was just breathing really lightly. And my niece, Tom's daughter, Mindy, was on one side, and his other daughter, Candy, was on the other side, and they were holding her hand. And Candy got up when I came into the bedroom. Candy got up so I could sit by her. And so I held her hand, and I said, inside I was saying, um, if you're ready, then, if I can give you any strength or any love or anything. And all of a sudden, I felt this energy, this kind of electrical feeling go up my arm, like
Hmm.
from her to me. And I was trying to give her,
Oh,
strength, but
oh my
I
gosh.
just felt it. And I opened my eyes, and her neck had been moving. And now when I looked at her, her neck wasn't moving, but she had made a sound, when you hear,
Yeah.
sometimes they let out a or whatever.
Hmm.
And there was just no sound at all. And I looked at her, and Mindy looked at me, and we looked at each other. And then we both turned to the nurse who was sitting over there. Um, and she saw us looking at her, and she got up with her stethoscope and went over and listened. And then she tested a couple other areas, and then she looked at us and just shook her head and said, "She's gone." I was like,
Oh,
"Oh." Um,
wow.
but I felt her very strongly around me for the few days afterwards.
Mm.
It was hard to even cry because I just felt her with me. It was like
Yeah.
she was just holding me in her arms, and I just felt her love. And so it was hard to think that she's not there, because
Yeah.
she was there. But
Right.
so
Right.
yeah, that
That's
was
pretty peaceful, that she and your
yeah.
dad both had people around them and it wasn't anything
Hmm.
sudden. You guys had warning but isn't it interesting how many times you hear that story of someone, a loved one saying, you can pass on if it's time for you to go, you
Yeah.
can go now. And then, oof, that's interesting.
Oh, I have to tell you this.
Yeah, please
Again,
do.
with her, the doctor said, just let her have whatever she wants. And so we, I was there, and they told her, said, "Dale, the doctor said you can have anything you want. So what would you like?" And she said, "I think I'll have a beer." And I have never seen my mother drink beer. I knew she had had a few drinks before I came in the picture, and she had had some wine after I was in the picture, but that was so rare. And somebody had some somewhere,
That's so
and
cute.
they gave her a beer, and she's, oh, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've never seen that.
Mom,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
so
not,
funny. Of all things, this little
yeah.
Christian woman, give me that bear. You're gonna part, so you might as well
Yeah,
have
yeah.
whatever you want. Oh, I really think it's wonderful that you and your family have been able to keep their memories alive. Dusty operated that Roy Rogers Dell Evans Museum and Happy Trails Theater, which you mentioned was in Branson, Missouri. They opened it in 1967 and then it closed in 2009. So it really had a good long run. Um, I went to Branson all the time growing up. It's one of my favorite places. So I'm bummed
Oh,
that I didn't see that museum. I don't know why. So unfortunately,
oh,
but so what was in that museum?
oh. Dad was what you would call a pack rat,
Oh boy.
which is why we started a museum in the first place,
Yes.
was to have some place for all his collections of in memorabilia and everything. And
Yeah.
in Apple Valley, and then we moved it to Victorville, and then we finally moved it to Branson, and they were making it more of a interaction type where you could press a button and it would tell you this about that and things like that. But
Yeah.
everything that he had, his old truck that he came to
Wow.
California in, things like that. He had the
That's so
one that they made for
neat.
him. They had the with the horns on the front of this. I don't know what type of car, like a Cadillac type,
Yeah.
and it was filled with well, at one time it was filled with silver dollars that lined it, but people would try and plop them off. So, but and his other
That's
two
funny.
cars and his race boat and um, a shoe and boot boots that he had growing up, and um, oh my God, his rock collection, his baseball collection, from people that would um, baseball players that would sign it and give it to him, and
Yeah.
um, I can't remember everything. Of course, Trigger, Bullet, Trigger Jr., Buttermilk were there.
Oh yeah, Buttermilk
Um,
was your mom's horse, right? I forgot to talk about
yes,
Buttermilk. Oh.
Buttermilk was a character.
Oh, really? How so?
Yes, had an he had an attitude. So he was
Really?
hard to keep control of all the time. So, but
Okay.
um, but he was a good horse though.
That's
So
so neat.
I'm
Big
trying to
parts
think.
of your
They had,
family.
yeah, yeah.
So what happened to the memorabilia that was in that museum? Do you know?
It was auctioned off.
Okay.
It The kids could have what they wanted but it had to be in an orderly fashion. And
Right.
most of the kids really didn't want a lot. Um, so there was only
Mm.
very few things that
Mm.
the family actually kept. So everything else was auctioned off.
Yeah. Okay.
That
So
was a
there are
big
people out
auction.
there that, oh, I bet it was with all that stuff. And I bet, there's people out there that have those pieces of that
Hmm.
history. It's kind of fun that so many people get to share in that because there
Yeah.
were so many super fans out there and still are. So, and I think it's fun too that the younger generations that may or may not know of him, like, will be able to have learned more about your family in this episode if they take a listen. So we talked about how Dusty had sung in the Sons of the Pioneers. He's retired from that now, but you can still visit their webpage. It still looks like the group is performing, right?
Yes, yes, they are.
Okay. So folks can check them out at sonsofthepioneers.org. But I have to say, it's amazing how much Dusty looks like his dad, Roy
Oh, I
Rogers.
know. Yeah.
Oh, it's so
And
eerie, isn't it? Just same
yeah,
person.
Dusty's sons, Dusty's son and grandsons look have the same look. So it's
That's so
yeah,
neat.
it's
I love that. Roy Rogers carries on.
yep.
So I hope you and your family will continue sharing Roy and Dell's stories and memories. And I love that they and you rode in the American Indian Expo in my hometown. It's like a little connection you and I have. And that,
Yeah, yeah.
right? It's just crazy. We're
I
both
know
Choctaw,
it.
and you were in my hometown at one point. But, that expo is something I myself am also hoping to keep alive. Perhaps it'll come back in 2023. So I'll be sure to post
I
info about it on my page.
okay,
So,
great. Because I would like
yeah.
to see
If
that
you do ever come to
happen.
town for that, let me know and I'll meet you out there.
Okay, I will.
So, Dodie, just two more questions. Are there any Native causes or businesses that you'd like to promote today?
Well, my niece, who is pretty much involved in all of that, she's gotten a lot more involved lately,
Right.
and that's Tammy. And she said that tribal sovereignty and self-determination, native vote, and the connection to traditional knowledge as Choctaw was something that she's working on. So since I would like to learn more and be more involved, I would probably um, follow her,
Perfect.
see what she has to say about things and how things are going. And
Great.
I am interested in on the Choctaw page. I don't know if you have that. Facebook
Mm-hmm.
has a
Yes.
page.
Yes,
Well, I
ma'am.
saw that you can learn the language,
Yes,
and I thought that would be so interesting to learn. And
definitely.
so I may look into that. I just
Maybe I'll see you on one of those classes.
yeah. And so I'm writing a book. I don't
Oh,
know if I'll ever finish it.
oh, I hope you do. And if you do, let me know because I want to be sure to put it on my page too.
Okay. So we'll see how things go. And
Yeah. So stay tuned, listeners, and check in every now and then. Hopefully, we'll get Dodie to finish that book up so we can read it. And then, so what's your niece's name? Is that who
Tammy,
you're? Tammy.
Tammy
Okay.
Tiger,
Tammy Tiger.
Tammy.
Okay, perfect. And so I'll try to find her information as well to post. It sounds like she's really keeping herself in the know, and that helps when we can
Yeah.
follow folks like that. So, and finally, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to share?
The mistakes you make, they're not
Mm,
a life sentence. And I
mm,
forgot how it goes, but
yeah,
because we can get stuck on some of the things we've done or let it shape us, and to step outside of your um, well, like today, I'm stepping outside of my
yeah,
comfort zone. And
absolutely. Right.
I think you'll learn a lot about people, yourself, and um, just how important you are. Everybody is, how we're connected. Um, to each other somehow, some way. So
That's beautiful.
Yep.
So Del Evans once said, "Cowgirl is an attitude, really. Pioneer spirit, a special American brand of courage. The cowgirl faces life head on, lives by her own lights, and makes no excuses. Cowgirls take stands, they speak up, they defend things they hold dear." Well said, Dale. She and Roy represent the cowboy in all of us. That spirit of courage and strength that they embodied and exemplified every single day was so apparent in their work, their family, their endurance, and those big, dazzling smiles. The world and their children were a brighter place when they were in it, but their spirit lives on in Dodie and in those of us who loved them. Thank you, Dodie, for being here with me today and for sharing about your dear family, Yakoke.
thank you.
Thanks for listening to Native Chalk Talk. Be sure to join our community on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Simply search for Native Chalk Talk. That's Native, CHOCTALK. And check us out at nativechoctalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're going to love it. Yakoke. Thank you, my friends.